Hello and welcome to another episode of the All Things Considered CX podcast. I'm your host, Bob Azman. We're glad to have you back today, and we're also glad to have Andrew Carothers joining us from Cisco Systems. And what's interesting about today's podcast is if you've listened to the two previous podcasts with Kevin Dean and David Edelman, you'll find that we're kind of on an AI CX strategy process right now, and it's really cool that it came together that way. And I think Andrew's going to add some great perspective for us on this topic of AI and CX strategy. So, Andrew, welcome to the podcast, and if you would please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Andrew Carothers. I am Digital Customer Experience Lead at Cisco Systems, and was one of the founders about 14 years ago of the CX function at Cisco. So I've had a front row seat to the growth of the function at a major multinational company, mirroring the growth of CX within industry in general.
That's great, Andrew. And I always ask my guests the same question. I doubt that when you were in 10 or 11 years old in grade school that you said, I want to be a digital CX lead at Cisco Systems. So how exactly did this career path get you to where you are today?
Well, I think like a lot of people in CX, I came from either marketing or customer support. In my view, CX is sort of the child of those two functions. I came from marketing. So I started my career in public relations, wrote a book called The Publicity Handbook with a co-author, and then expanded there from PR specifically to corporate communications, marketing in general. Started working at Cisco in a marketing function, in services field marketing. And that's around that time was when we created the CX function, because we saw that we wanted to shift from purely a hardware vendor where CX wasn't important. We sold hardware, we got paid up front. Customers used it, they didn't use it, didn't matter to us, we'd already been paid. We'd circle back roughly 10 years later, probably with a different salesperson anyway by that point, and sell again. Customers had IT departments that were focused in on Cisco gear. They had trained Cisco professionals. They were locked in. So really, the focus on CX of getting customers to adopt and use what we sold them was not important. But as we were shifting to a recurring revenue financial model, and as we were developing software and purchasing software companies to add to our portfolio, that's when we knew we needed to develop a customer experience function. So that's when I joined. There were several of us from marketing. In fact, I think there were roughly 55,000 employees at Cisco at the time globally, and there were 100 of us who started the CX function. 50 were services renewal managers who did the same thing on Monday in the new CX function as they'd been doing the previous Friday in the sales function. So really, there were 50 of us who started, not even dipping a toe in the water, sort of dipping a toenail in the water, who then built the function to where it is now. So I came from marketing into the world of CX.
That's really interesting journey that you had. I kind of am reminiscing a little bit. I worked for a very small third-party provider, so they were the implementers basically of call center software into the customer. And I always remember customers coming to us and saying, I have to fix my customer service. I have to fix my customer experience. So I need technology. So I want to buy technology. And it'd be like, okay, we'll sell you, a couple $1 million worth of technology, but what is it that you're trying to solve? And I think what you just described there is exactly that, is helping them solve it, what their strategy is first, and then get the technology aligned to that strategy rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I don't know if we were smart to make that decision, or if it was because there were 50 of us, so we didn't have any budget.
Good point.
But I will say that our first couple of years, what we focused on out of necessity was really two things. One, being evangelists within Cisco for the discipline of experience. This was at this point a 35-year-old company that had no experience in the world of customer experience. So we had to explain to people, what is customer experience? It was not as well known a field then as it is now. So what is customer experience? Why is it important? what is a good experience, bringing in examples of companies that do a good job with both offline and online. And so half of what we did was evangelizing the need for a customer experience focus within the company as well as an organization. And the other half was really sort of being an IT organization. We spent 3 years trying to get access and ultimately being successful in identifying all the different data sources within the company and getting access to them. And it was like pulling a thread. We knew about the major ones, purchase data, et cetera. But we'd go and talk to one data group and sometimes they gave us access right away. Other times they fought it. You can't have this data. This is our data. And then, but then they would mention, oh, you should talk to these people over here. And so it took us a couple of 2 to 3 years to get access to all of that data. And data is the fuel that drives all of customer experience if you're going to try to personalize it, right? Otherwise, you're sort of post-sales marketing, but not really driving a personalized customer experience and therefore not that relevant to customers. So that's what we did for the first couple of years. So we didn't buy new technology. We were just trying to tie together what we had.
Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge for companies today, is doing that,
Huge,
right?
huge
Um,
are real.
so not too long ago, Andrew, you wrote an article about the state of CX, and you characterized the state of CX as we're a bunch of teenagers. And rumor has it you have an update for that maybe we've grown just a tad since you wrote that article. So I'd love to hear from you about where you think we're at today.
Yeah, great. So about a year and a half ago, I wrote an article for CXPA, and I talked about how CX had reached the teenage years, meaning we were at the point as an industry where it was recognized across businesses and across organizations that it's a thing. There's a there, right? So it's not a little 8-year-old kid running around. It's a 13, 14-year-old, right? With a budding sense of identity, but still searching for an identity. What do we call ourselves? Are we customer experience? Are we customer success? Something else? Where do we fit in an organization? I've seen the discipline, you're reporting to the CEO, reporting to the chief revenue officer, sales, engineering, marketing. So I've seen it all over the place. So where do we belong? What do we call ourselves? What are we going to be? And that's created some confusion, not only within our own community, but in the communities that we engage with. Business leaders, when they're hearing different definitions of CX, and I'm just going to use the term CX rather than customer success, et cetera. It was as confusing it was to us trying to figure out who we are. It was confusing for the people running businesses and organizations as to what we are, and different. You get to the point even where people are hiring for grocery store clerks and calling it a CX role. So like that's yes, it's customer facing, but that's a very different role than what a lot of us in the CX world do. So there's confusion around it. So I would say that now, a couple of years later, we've been forced through the recent economic downturn to sort of mature even more. I'd put us more at like the 18, 19-year-old level now. So we still have some figuring it out about what we're going to be. There's still some confusion around what do we call ourselves, and confusion in the minds of business leaders and organizational leaders as well. However, we're much more mature than we were even just a couple of years ago, because we've been forced to move away from the sort of broad, nice sounding aspirations of we're gonna delight customers, we're gonna grow loyalty, and kind of a trust me approach. Doesn't this logically make sense? So you should invest in CX so that we can then grow loyalty, which will lead to more sales or renewals or happier customers, whatever it is. Which sounds great. And when money was flowing in the business world a few years ago, and there was sort of this buzz around CX, I think a lot of people sort of took the attitude of, I don't know exactly what that is, but I know I need to have it. So they invested in it. So there was a growth of the industry. When money got tight and businesses needed to make cuts, that's where they cut, because it was seen as a cost center. I think that there's an opportunity now and I'm starting to see more conversation around this in the CX world of we need to focus the benefit that we bring to organizations on what the leaders of that organization care about. So whether that's growing the business and increasing sales, whether that's lowering churn, whether that's increasing renewals, whatever that might be, let's focus in on those specific metrics that the CEO and the COO care about. And that's not NPS, that's not CSAT. Those are maybe important operational metrics for within the CX function to understand, are we optimizing what we're doing? But that's not really what we should be reporting out to the folks who fund us. Because if I'm a business leader and I'm now seeing lower interest rates and I'm seeing more investment coming my way or the opportunity to invest more in my business, I know what it costs for me to hire a salesperson. And I know what the ROI on that salesperson is as they ramp up. I need to understand that when it comes to investing in the CX function. Otherwise, I'm going to invest where I'm going to drive near-term dollars. So for CX to be able to come in and say, look, here's the direct impact that we have on renewal rates, and here's the financial impact on that. Or here's the opportunity to deflect incoming calls to our customer support organization. And here's the direct cost savings associated with those deflections. Here's the direct impact we have on the bottom line. The same way that sales goes and talks about the direct impact they have on the bottom line. The more we're able to do that, I think the more opportunity we have to get investment that I think is starting to being unlocked in the business world right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're getting it.
That's good. That's good to hear that we are. I've characterized what you just described as the mom and apple pie syndrome. So we would go into the CFO and say, it's the right thing to do. Give me $1 million, right? With, to buy whatever or to hire more people the CFO would look at us like, what? I mean, yeah, you may think it's the right thing or the nice thing to do, but you got to tell me, like you just characterized so well, why and what am I going to get in return? Because by the way, there's 20 other people lined up at my door also asking for $1 million, and I don't have, $20 million. I only have so much money.
Right. And here's then the second part of CX growing up and now being sort of 18, 19, 20 years old instead of 13, 14 years old. That is to have those meetings, we need to be able to go in and also not only talk about the ROI we'll bring, but also here's specifically what we'll do. So now this gets into a more mature understanding of the discipline of experience, of what is involved in bringing that in. And it's sort of the classic, iceberg, and that we've been talking about what people see above the iceberg. But what's below the iceberg is the hard work, the connecting of processes and people across silos and data. I mentioned data is the fuel, and platforms and all of that sort of foundational work that involves connecting IT and marketing and branding and all of that in order to drive it. So we go in the tip of the iceberg, they see journey mapping. And I heard somebody say it's almost like the gateway drug where people kind of can, hang their hat on that. Oh, I've heard of that. I know what that is. But the journey mapping is only successful if, in terms of driving the ROI that we want to talk about, if we have all of the under the water, sort of the hidden back office functions tied together. I think we're getting more mature as an industry to, one, understand what those are, and two, to be able to communicate what those are so that we can go in, ask for the investment, explain how it's going to be used, and show what the ROI is going to be.
It absolutely couldn't agree more with you about that approach. And also sometimes I think in the profession, we want the quick fix. Let's do a journey map because it'll solve everything for us. Let's buy the technology, it'll solve everything for us. And what you're talking about is getting to the core of a sustainable approach to CX investment that I think is going to be long lasting, obviously with the sustainability. And I think it was the other comment you made, I'll just add to it, is when we had the economic downturn and it was treated as a cost center, many CX professionals lost their job because companies viewed it as, a travel expense. Everybody stop traveling. That's how we're going to save money. Okay, all the CX people, you're out of here. We're going to save money. And instead of thinking about it as an integral part of the business, as you've described. So it's good to hear we're maturing. Um, what are we working on now? I mean, what do you view as the hot things that we're working on now? You are at Cisco Systems, and that will continue our maturity to adulthood.
Yeah, great question. I think the largest area where we're focusing in, certainly what I'm focusing in on at Cisco, but I think the industry is starting to move toward, it's starting to embrace, and really, I don't want to say even starting, is embracing, is the trend to providing a digital first experience for every customer, where digital is no longer considered simply a way to scale to the long tail part of the business, the part of the business that's the smaller part of the business from a dollar return perspective that's not covered by CSMs. So, all right, we'll use digital for that. Or in the case of Cisco, since we're a very partner-driven organization, digital and partners the way to scale, and that's it. I think that was the way the world worked. That was what customers wanted, certainly 10 years ago and before. I think we were already shifting, customers were already shifting away from that, and the pandemic really accelerated it to where now all customers, from the smallest to the largest, want a digital first experience. I don't remember, for example, the last time I or anybody I know, when they planned a trip, picked up the phone and called an airline as their first step, right? We want a digital first approach. Now, it doesn't mean digital only. We want to be able to, and so we want to be able to quickly and easily get what we're looking for, whether that be an airline ticket, choosing a seat on the plane, information about how to use something we've purchased, some troubleshooting, whatever it might be. And we want to be able to do that whenever and wherever we are. So that could be during the workday, that could be in the evening, that could be, from a phone during a kid's soccer game on a Saturday afternoon, whenever and wherever it is. If we can't get that quickly and easily digitally, then we want to be able to very easily connect to a person, whether that be via chat or phone or whatever it might be. So it's not digital only, but it's digital first, which means digital is not only a way to sort of cost effectively scale our reach. It's rather the primary way to do this if we do it right. And that last part is a critical element if we do it right. So that sort of gets into the question of, well, what do we mean when we say digital, and what is a digital customer experience? And when I talk about digital customer experience and the need to the customer's demand to have a digital first experience, that means time together on the front end, that on the customer facing end, the digital touch points that a customer has. And most customers live in a digital first world. So that's everything from obviously a company's website, but if a company runs a community, like Cisco's got Cisco community of our users that we provide, 20 million users a year, unique users a year come to the Cisco community, 50 million come to their website. So we're a huge company, so our scale is enormous. But this holds true for much smaller companies that have much smaller communities and traffic on their websites. It includes social media, whether it be, we have a large, for example, user community on Reddit that is not part of a Cisco managed community. It's LinkedIn, it's other social platforms. So it's all the variety. Email, I would say, is digital. So it's looking at the digital channels in which customers operate and figuring out for each organization, where do my customers live? Like, which channels are they actually sort of active in, taken as a whole? And it's tying together that. Now, on the back end, it's again tying together all of the data, the platforms that hold those data, the tools, et cetera, so that we're able to provide a consistent experience for customers across those channels. And when they want to connect with a human, so the human knows, oh, I know what the issue is. I know what you're looking for. I've got the information about your past purchases or renewals, whatever it might be, so that it's able to have a personalized and relevant conversation with that. So I'll use as an example, say, Peloton. I think a lot of people either use a Peloton or know what Peloton is. Ring Doorbell is another great example where they actually have hardware, and they also have physical channels. In the case of Ring, they also have partners, right? You go to Best Buy or whatever and buy a Ring doorbell. But there's also this great digital experience where the data is connected. So if you go onto the Peloton app on your phone, it's got the same data about you as the Peloton, desktop version as the Peloton hardware itself. Same thing with Ring, et cetera. So it's all tied together. That data is all tied together. So a digital customer experience ties together all of the customer data, analyzes that data then on the back end to understand what customers are likely to need. So now we can get to the next stage, which is predictive. So now we can push out notifications to customers, not only about you have an upcoming renewal, it's important to remind them of that,
Right.
but also you may be struggling, you seem to be struggling with this stage of adoption based on other customers, your size, your industry, et cetera. Here are some steps that you can take. So rather than waiting for the customer to get frustrated and come to us, we can directly reach out to them. And again, in their preferred channel. Is that via a message on LinkedIn? Is it a banner message on the website when they log in so we know who they are? Is it via email? Whatever channel they engage in or channels, we can reach out to them. So that's very different than a non-digital experience. Then let's call them on the phone with the CSM. Let's wait for them to call us, whether that be customer support or whatever it might be. Let's sort of put them in charge of managing their own adventure. They're in charge. It's the age of the customer. If we don't do this, they can go, the barriers to exit and loyalty levels are low, so they can go to another company, another vendor pretty quickly. However, we want to help guide them through the experience they're having, and we can do that digitally, much more easily and much more cost effectively than if we're trying to, call them with CSMs or email them with CSMs. So, so that's what I mean by digital customer experience. And I think that there's a growing understanding that every customer, including the biggest, most strategic customers spending the most money, want a digital first experience, because we can talk about customers, but really we're talking about human beings. And we all want a digital first experience in most things that we do. And second of all, the understanding that we need to leverage data analytics, because again, data is the fuel, to better understand our customers so that we can proactively guide them through their journey. And that gets us to things like AI.
Andrew, I think it's really fascinating. And I kind of just connected the dots while you were talking here, because I'm one of those people that sometimes I might use the app on my phone. Sometimes I might be at my desk and using my laptop. Sometimes I might be doing a security panel on my home, physically standing there. And the fact that you just said, and all behind the scenes, all that data is connected. So I don't have to go on my laptop and say, okay, where's all the data that I have on my phone, right? It's all connected. And I think to some extent, maybe others are like that with me, is we take that for granted. It's almost like when I turn the light switch on, I expect the light to go on. You don't really stop and think about what's happening behind the scenes to get the light to go on. And I think what you've described is exactly that. We used to call it omni-channel and all kinds of other things, but I think this digital channel description that you have really kind of lays out what we all want, right? And it puts us in control of that, meaning us as consumers or as clients in control of it, rather than having to search and find it. I think you've really hit the nail on the head with this description.
Well, thank you. And you know what? Your metaphor of turning on the light bulb, which resonates with me. I have no idea how it all works, but it just works, and that's all I want. And if the light doesn't go on when I flip the switch, then I get frustrated. So to some degree. So
Right.
there's so much that goes on in order to make the light turn on when I flip the switch. And that's the hard part of CX. And that sort of ties back to what I was talking about earlier, is the maturing of CX professionals to understand the sort of the foundational functional element of providing the customer experience and be able to communicate that to go in and ask for the investment.
Yes. And I also think you've taken it to the next level too, Andrew. We're speaking with Andrew Carothers from Cisco Systems today. I think you've taken it to the next level too, because having run global customer service operations for many years, any new technology came out, the immediate thing was, how can we cut costs? I mean, chat, whatever it was, it was, how can we apply this to cut costs? So we eliminate our conversations with customers. You're kind of flipping that on the side, saying it still might be digital in nature. We may not be directly talking to customers, but we're having a conversation with customers and we're interacting with them where they want to be and securing the relationship.
Absolutely. As I threw out the term before of age of a customer, right? So now we're in the age of the customer, meaning the customers are in control because, as I mentioned, the barriers to exit, to switch to a different company are very low. I talked about how when Cisco was selling hardware only, they were super high. Customers were stuck. They're not stuck anymore. So, so they're in control, and now that they have so much access to data and information, and they can talk to existing customers via community and all that, right? So they can get all the information that they're looking for in ways that they couldn't 10 years ago. So the customer's in control. That's what I mean by the age of the customer. So in that age, then customers need to understand, companies need to understand their customers are having an experience. And they're certainly having a digital experience because of everything we've talked about. So whether the company tries to guide that journey, whether that company tries to make that easy or not, so if they cut the customer experience function, those customers are still having an experience. And if it's not a good experience, we know from tons of data over the last 5 years, from what we see at Cisco, what Gartner and Forrester and the Technology Services Industry Association and IDC and other industry analysts have shown over and over again, that the expected experience that a customer will have is the third most important buying criteria. So it's not just, well, they'll figure it out once they purchased it. They won't purchase it if they think they're going to have a bad experience. And because they have access to your customers today when they're in the buying process, and not just the references you send them, they'll go to the chat rooms, they'll watch. And number one, by the way, is functionality. Does the product do what I need it to do? Number two is quality, right? Is it going to break all the time, or is it going to work? Number three is, am I actually going to have a good experience using this product? Am I actually going to get the value out of this? And how hard is it going to be for me to get the value? Number four is price. So if that's what's important to customers and they're having an experience, whether we guide it or not, we're putting ourselves at risk if we don't invest in guiding that experience.
Right. And that experience and value just go hand in hand, right? We used to talk about that all the time as we with our clients, we'd say, you know what, we want to add value. So it's hard for them to switch to somebody else, because we always want them to say to the competitors of ours, oh, I couldn't possibly switch to you because all the value that they add. And it really wasn't price driven. It was, technology or whatever it was that tie in that value. Andrew, we talked about this before we got started. We could talk for 3 hours on this. And I say this about all these conversations, our time goes by so fast, but I want to make sure I get this final question into you before we adjourn our podcast. And that's okay. We're late teens, 18, 19. Where are we headed? Andrew, look into your crystal ball. As I always ask our guests, where are we going?
All right. So we are, as we're moving into our early 20s.
There you go.
So here's where I think we're going. One, I think we are getting more mature, as we've talked about, and I think that will start leading to more investment in the function. I think where we're going, as well as a lot of business of organizations, is adopting AI. And I think that where we will be adopting AI in the context of customer experience is being able to understand our customers better, And as a result of that understanding, personalize the experiences that we provide so we'll be more relevant to our customers, providing them the information that they need when they need it, guiding them to success, guiding them away from needing troubleshooting. Hopefully before they even know, right? If the car is driving toward the cliff, let's certainly, guide them away from the cliff. Ideally, let's do it before they even know that they're heading in the direction of the cliff, like before they even know there's a problem. So AI will help us in a couple of ways, sort of broadly speaking. And these are things that we're implementing at Cisco today. So this is not something that's way out in the future. This is something available today. It'll just get easier in the future as more of this functionality gets built natively into different products that vendors are coming out with, so that companies and CX organizations will have to do less sort of building on their own, and they'll be able to buy more AI functionality off the shelf. But specifically, it'll do a couple of things. One, the data analytics, the sort of old school definition of AI, that to help analyze massive amounts of data across multiple databases so that we can understand really down to a personal level, an individual level, who our customers are, what their behaviors are, comparing that information from maybe what they say by scanning and analyzing using AI, social media posts, comments, etc., comparing that to what customers tell us when we do surveys, when we do, and I think there'll be a need for less sort of conventional surveying because of AI analytics capability. When we do focus groups, all those things, sort of comparing that, and also comparing to what they're saying to what they're doing. What are they purchasing or not purchasing, renewing or not renewing? Where are they adopting? Where are they getting stuck? Because sometimes what people say and what they do are different. So to have a much more holistic understanding of each customer and to be able to then personalize and make relevant the information we're providing to each customer. AI will help that too in the form of generative AI. So to be able to customize information, right? Most companies now create sort of one version or a couple of versions of their material, right? Whether they're launching a new product or it's a user guide, whatever it might be. But with generative AI, we can take that sort of vanilla version and we can create multiple versions of that same content, which means we can make it relevant to the different languages of our customers, technology level. Some people want a sort of higher level business version. Other people want an in the weeds technology version of the same material. Some people want it in various languages. Some people want it in video form or an infographic form or a long form, a short form video in a series, maybe a long form video. So to be able to take one piece of content and create, right, to use Gen AI in a way that with humans, we would not invest in the amount of humans it would take to create all these multiple versions. But to be able to tailor the content to the knowledge level and the language and all the things, the learning style, all these things I've been talking about, and be able to then share that out proactively to our customers where they need it, in the channel they need it and when they need it. That's something that I think that will help us provide orders of magnitude more value to our customers. So being able to lean into AI, even in a way that we couldn't certainly 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but I would say even a year or 6 months ago, it's getting easier and easier as vendors are including AI in their function. It's getting easier and easier for organizations, large and small, to be able to take advantage of that capability and provide a really tailored, specific, and valuable experience to our customers. That's where we're headed.
I think that's absolutely fascinating and a great kind of encapsulation of AI and utilization of AI and where we're headed. I want you to make one agreement with me before we end our podcast, Andrew, and that is that when we turn 21, you have to come back. When we become an official adult, I want you to come back at 21. So
fair enough.
tell us
Fair
where we're
enough.
at.
Yes,
So,
I'm in.
that's good. I appreciate putting you on the spot like that. Andrew, obviously everybody knows Cisco Systems, and what's a great way to connect with you if people want to learn more about this?
Yeah, best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. I love it when people connect with me. I love to continue the conversation on LinkedIn or on phone, whatever it might be. So please do.
Excellent. It's been great having you. Andrew Carothers from Cisco Systems. It's been great having you today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
And listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your networks. And as always, stay tuned for another episode of the All Things Considered CX podcast. I'm your host, Bob Azman. Until we meet again, take care.